Hey there, welcome to another Curtis Stage video tutorial. Today's tutorial is in Photoshop. We're going to do some basic painting. This is going to be kind of painting techniques. We're going to draw a skull actually and paint it and kind of do it kind of an artistic style with it. So let's get started. Now, before we get started, I want to show you kind of some examples of artists that have, there's a long history of artists creating skull paintings. And these paintings that I'm going to show you are all not digital. They're all done on canvas with paint. So here's a Cezanne painting. Love the color. And I want you to notice that the works that I'm going to show you are not super realistic, right? These are more, well, this is an impressionist painting. These are, kind of using paint in creative ways, not concerned, these artists, with rendering these things perfectly. So if you're, new to drawing and painting, that's kind of exciting to be able to do that. But what these artists do share is, really high quality mark making, light and dark and contrast, right? Beautiful. This one, a little bit more chaotic. I love the energy that's happening with the drips. I also like how there's kind of imagery within the skull's eyes. So very cool. So this is Tom French. This is a Van Gogh. Really great. That red in there with the yellow. I love all the paint strokes there where you really see him. He's, kind of the colors mixed together. Very interesting. Another couple more Van Gogh skulls. He did a lot of skulls. This is kind of a famous one with the cigarette. I love this one. And I really love the light on this skull, how it's hitting. It's very, very bold and dynamic. And I love the big, thick, kind of brush work that's happening too. And not really worrying, it's not sloppy necessarily, but it just has an energy to it, having that brush stroke like that. Here's a different one. Softer, smaller brushes, but a lot of movement within the brush strokes and more detail on this skull for Van Gogh, but not a lot. Still feels like a sketch, right? It's not maybe a completed painting necessarily. And this Walter Coleman, a little more blended on this one, a little more ominous too with the black. And then the last one I thought I'd show you is Basquiat, more graffiti-like. Love the mark making lines on here, the energy, the chaos that's happening in here. So I don't want you to think that what we're going to draw today you have to draw realistically or paint realistically. I want us to kind of learn how to paint using the tools. I'm using a Wacom tablet. You could use a mouse doing this demo, but I'm using a Wacom tablet. So when we get started, a couple things to note. I'm going to be working on a 10:8 at 200 resolution image, so you can click create on that. And then I also have an image that I'm bringing in as a reference, and I will have this image linked in YouTube. So this is going to be an image that we're going to use as a reference, and I have it in the blank document. I brought it in, and I also have it separately because we're going to refer to this later. But at first what I want to do is I want to have it so I can kind of draw over the top of it. We will be downloading some brushes as well, and I'll have a link to those. Okay, so what I want to do is have a layer called drawing. I'm going to start there. I'm going to first though click on the photo itself here. It's just a smart object photo. I'm going to get rid of it later at the end when this is done. I want to lower its opacity because I want to do a basic line drawing over the top, kind of a loose line drawing just to kind of get me started. And that's going to happen on this layer, but I'm going to lock that layer and I'm going to lock the layer above here. And I'm just going to be on this drawing layer. Now, so the Wacom tablet, I'm going to use a black, and I'm going to go and use a brush in here. I'm going to go to my paintbrush. I'm going to use a brush that'd probably be good for drawing in here. So you'll see that there's a bunch of folders. If you're not familiar with how brushes work, there's a bunch of folders, and you can kind of use this slider when you have a folder open. Here's general brushes. Let me open that up, and you can use the slider to make the icons bigger or smaller. That's up to you. You'll see that I have a digital painting brush #1 folder, and that has some brushes in it that we are going to use for this demo. And this one, I want to use the sampled brush, this one right here. There's a few good ones, but I'm going to use this sampled brush to kind of start. And it's nice because it's got some built-in characteristics already. You can change all those. We can go and change those in a minute if we need to. Let me close this down. If I want to change any of those characteristics, of course I can go to Window and I can go to Brush Settings, and bring that up. And then while I'm on the brush, you can see how you can kind of change some of the settings. So there's shape dynamics with pen pressure. It'll change the size. You can increase that with pen pressure, which I kind of like. I'm not going to change the angle jitter on there. And there is a dual brush, so it's giving it this texture on here. If I took that off, you can see it's a much smoother brush. So I'm going to leave that on, and then transfer I'm going to leave on as well. Transfer makes it so that it's much smoother, kind of lines that they kind of tail off at the ends. So I'm going to leave the transfer checked. If I go to my brush panel itself, this is kind of gives me some basics. It's a little bit more detailed than this area up here. Okay, so brush settings. If I go back to brush tip shape up on the top, then I can change the spacing of the brush. You can see this. So I'm going to leave it where the spacing was. I think it was maybe around 40 or something like that. Okay, and you can also change the angle of this as well and kind of manipulate that. So I have it kind of 115, I think. So that's pretty good. Something like this. So I'm going to close this brush settings. Sometimes it's good to have that, you can dock it over here with your layers and put it over your layers, and your brushes over here with your layers. I like to do that, kind of have it docked in here. So let me maybe get it in there, maybe not. Doesn't want to go. All right, then I've got my layers panel. Okay, so now I want to make this brush much smaller when I'm doing this drawing here. And with the Wacom tablet, you want to get it comfortable. If you've never drawn with a tablet before, you're new to drawing with a tablet, it gets, you have to get used to it a tad. So I'm going to just do, get comfortable with drawing, put it in an angle, maybe tilt it up. I know some people like to use a pillow, some people like to use a stand for it. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to go around this and just kind of sketch out some, basics of, the skull. Okay, so once you have kind of a basic drawing, you can kind of see, you can turn that off, and you've got kind of a sketch in there. And you don't need a lot of detail here at this point, but this is nice to have because we're gonna be painting over the top of this skull, and then we're gonna reference it only afterwards. Then we're not going to be tracing anymore, so this is really the only time that we're tracing. So it's kind of nice to get some of these details and just some line work, and then you can kind of do your line work basically using the image as a reference afterwards. So I basically just get a little bit of detail in here, a little bit of line work, but I know that I'm going to come back and get more line work later to make it more creative and more artistic. All right, so that's going to be it for that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is unlock the skull photo and turn the opacity all the way back up. I'm going to turn off the eyeball for the drawing, right? And then this is going to be my painting layer. And what I want to do is I want to grab colors out of this so we can color pick them as we go. So I like to block out colors, and kind of just before I start mixing, I like to block in this. So here's what I'm going to do that. It's pretty cool. I'm going to click on, it doesn't matter what brush that I'm on, but I'm going to make it, it's kind of probably better if I'm on like kind of a regular round brush. So I'm going to go to general brushes and do a hard round and make it somewhat bigger. I'm going to unlock that paint layer. I'm going to lock these two layers. So let me lock both those layers in the paint layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my paint colors down here. I'm just going to be black and white, right? Just a little scale here. So I want to make my brush bigger. So I'm gonna color pick. I can use the brackets on the keyboard, and to color pick in here, all I have to do is hold down Option or Alt on my keyboard. It's gonna pick up, so obviously this is gonna be black right here in the nose, and so then I'm gonna paint a little black. Then I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna kind of go dark to light, so I'm gonna look and see, I don't know, I need about like 8 or 9. So then I'm gonna go in here and say, okay, that's pretty dark there. Now, I don't want to click a bunch of times because it's going to build up paint, right? So my opacity is 100%. My flow was only at 55. So actually, let me undo that. Make sure your flow's all the way up to 100, and then option click in here, pick up paint, and then just click once, right? And there's that gray. And then I'm going to go and option click. Let's see, maybe over here, maybe this little lighter. Yeah, maybe tiny bit. Not gonna make that much of a difference. Then I'm gonna go down over on here and get this shadow over here, and one click. That doesn't seem very much lighter. Let's go here. There we go, that's lighter. Up here, good. And then kind of right there, and obviously right here. And then it'll probably go to white. So that's probably a pretty good range. You can see I've got kind of a grayscale range here. Pretty nice. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint and start kind of blocking out kind of the light and dark on this. I'm going to lose the skull in a second, so I'm going to have to reference it. You're going to see I'm going to start painting over it. I'm not going to be able to see much on this. So blocking out, I don't want to use the mixer brush quite yet, but I could if I want to, so it's just kind of up to you. So I'm going to go back to my paintbrush, I'm going to go to my mixer brush tool, and I'm going to go back into the digital painting, and let's see, I'm just going to pick kind of a basic one that I can kind of, let's see, this might be, let's see, oil 5, let's see what that looks like. And let me load brush with the, if I option click right here, I've got black, and then I can kind of see what this looks like right here. Okay, that's kind of nice. It's a little scrappy. If I get it, yeah, okay, that's pretty good. So this is the mixer brush. So what I want to do is I'm going to undo those. Okay, and I'm on the paint layer, right? My drawing layer is not to be seen right now. And let me zoom in. And I've got black. I'm going to start kind of painting over this black that's right in here, and you don't have to, worry about detail so much. Just kind of start laying it in, and you're not going to see much on here. Now, I want to make sure that I have pen pressure on if I'm using the tablet. Right up here on the options bar, I do not want to sample all the layers because I'm going to be sampling down from here. So I don't want to be sampling the photo actually and mix that up. And you can see that there's some settings in this options right here. So wet, load, and a 7% mix. And I could bring the flow down just a little bit, maybe like 78. And I can get in here, and it doesn't look like I'm doing anything, but watch, see, I'm painting black. So let me. So I'm basically doing what's called a value study. So I'm essentially getting in here and kind of just mapping out the light and dark. I'm not really worrying about the details of this skull here. So I'm just doing light and dark. So here's where I want to clean my brush off and click, option click, and start with a new, load a new brush. So I'm gonna option click. So here I'm at the point, and the teeth are going to be interesting. Got to do those. Here I'm at the point where now I'm losing the background image, but I've got basically kind of a tone that I want. So now I want to have this one open as well. So I'm going to take it and kind of drag it so I've got it as a reference here. So I want to be able to see it while I'm painting, right? So I can go to arrange, and I can go to tile and have them kind of side by side. And I don't need this one very big, so I can zoom out on that one and just get it. So now it's a reference there, and I can kind of see it. So I can use it because I can't see the skull anymore, right? Underneath here. So now I've got it as a reference, and this is starting to look good now. So now I can go back in and kind of get painterly with it. The teeth, right? I'm going to start. So I'm going to option click on the pickup and kind of start blocking those in. Just and I can option click in here and pick, kind of pick up paint inside there too. So I can say, oh, I want to continue with this kind of gray. And let's see what other brush that I have here. So I'm gonna go back to let's see, I'm gonna go to oil 3. Yeah, this one's pretty good. So you can see up in here on oil 3 that it's, you get some presets that you can mess with. Again, you can kind of go, I want this to have only 7% mix. You could decide you want it to mix more. You want to get it up in the 50. Again, I'm making sure that I'm clicking with the tablet, that on side of the tablet, and then I can kind of see how this is going to work. So I want to pick up paint. So now I want to pick up kind of like some light over here. So I'm going to option or alt click, and that's now my loaded color. You can see it's loaded right there. And now I can get in here and start kind of doing stuff. So here's where you can kind of get creative with your brush work, right? You can start kind of getting bigger and smaller with your brush, kind of get a little bit more creative. I'm gonna click in here and get black going. I think it just needs to be darker right here. And then option click. So see how now it's blending that gray in. I can turn my drawing lines back on and put them above this so I can kind of see the drawing in there too if I like that. So some of that line work that's in there. And I can also change the opacity on that drawing too, so it's down lower. But it's kind of in my way right now, so I'm going to take that off. And I may not use that drawing, but I usually like to go back in with lines again even after I do all this. So I really start detailing out. and then you can again decide if you like the lines. I think the line work on there is kind of cool, so I turn that back on. I've got that. I can turn my photo part off. Now you can see all the places that you're kind of missing when you turn the photo off. So this is a good time to now then get in and really kind of blend this even more, really fill in kind of the gaps in here. So this is a good point to do that. So I've got the painting layer. I'm gonna go back in here and really kind of fill in some of these spots in here. So that's starting to look pretty cool, right? It's loose, it's kind of painterly, right? I can look at different brushes too. I can say, okay, I've got that kind of look going. Let me try oil number 9 in our list and see how that looks. And I'm going to try hitting with some lighter and see kind of what kind of brush things we can get here with this. You can see you got kind of a scrapey, cool look here. Let me kind of go hit some light spots. So, and I want some of that. And again, the mixer, you can clean it off. So you can load the brush. So it'll load with the color, clean it, and then wherever you start painting, it's gonna. And you can turn the mixer brush off and paint with regular paint brush on here too. So then you can kind of go back in with some textures over the top. So if I click this and go to my brush tool, and you can go and see kind of what you can kind of do with just regular, with oil, the one we were just using, with a regular brush, so it's not mixing. And then you've got some different, kind of textures that will happen on here that'll be on the surface of it, right? So with this, you might want to, if you're going to go back and do stuff like that and get that kind of texture going, it's pretty cool. But you might want to lower the opacity down a little bit, right? And you still have the pen pressure going, and you've got that opacity pen pressure, and the lighter you go, you can kind of get a little texture going here. So you can just kind of hit it with texture. And then you can go back and mix this, by the way. So maybe I got a little texture kind of happening over here. Gives kind of it's almost like a patterny thing. Looking much cooler. I don't want it to look photorealistic. I have a photo for that. I want it to be painterly. So this is where you can kind of do this. And then if you like all that, then you can go back in and go, okay, now I want to mix that. So then you go back to the mixer brush, and then with the same brush, even, you can use that same brush if you want, and you can clear your brush out so it's got nothing. Right, so 0 things here. If it's transparent right there, that means that you're just mixing what's, then you can kind of mix what's already on there. I'm not going to go crazy on here because I like a little of that texture, but let's lighten that up a little bit there. Pretty cool. I'd probably put a dramatic background happening behind this guy. That would be pretty sweet. That would be, of course, on a layer below. So you've got your painting drawing layer, and you know, create another layer here, move it down below, and then you could even paint that layer. So let me turn these guys off and just kind of do some big, broad. Let's see, just big, broad. I'm gonna stay in my kind of gray area here. Get my brush really big and just kind of go, you know, load this up with the color. So there it is, I'm loaded it, and now I'm gonna kind of just give myself some, give this guy like a little bit of something happening here. So he's in a space, he or she, sorry. And then I'm gonna change color. I'm just gonna kind of go a little darker, and now the mixer is happening, right? So now it's gonna mix. And just kind of give it, let me turn on now. All right, kind of cool. So I'm giving it kind of a space back there, give it a lot of motion, movement. Of course, I'll get rid of these guys down here on the paint layer. Don't really need those anymore. So I'm going to take let's see, I'm going to take the marquee tool and kind of select and just hit delete. Command D, deselect, got those out of there. And of course, I'd probably put a shadow below the skull, or I could leave it free floating, but now I've kind of got it in a space. It kind of looks cool having the background back there. So that gets you kind of started painting. I usually start off with a sketch. I like some of that line work. I'd probably go in and detail this out with more line work and get, you know, kind of different thicknesses of line. I'd maybe even get some line work going on this abstract background. But hey, there we go. We got little, you know, some painting techniques here using your Wacom tablet, using mixer brushes and some drawing techniques. Really think about blocking out light and dark, right? This is what you really want to do. You want to block out that light and dark and start getting good at kind of really looking at images for their value, right, and tone. How they transition between light and dark, where light hits an object, where shadow occurs on an object. And again, I'm not looking for super detail on these things. I'm looking for kind of exciting line work. All right, so that's been another Curtis Stage tutorial. We'll see you next time.